We now come to the church in its authority and in its mission. And this is the boy and his Bible speaking again. The church has various responsibilities which it should take seriously. And it is the responsibility of the church and the responsibility of the pastors and the shepherds of the church. The leadership of the church should be identified as pastors and shepherds. And in that capacity, some of them can be teachers, some of them can be evangelists, but their main function is to be a pastor, to care for individuals and to be a shepherd to them, to be pastors. In the Epistle of Romans, Paul was many things. He was a prophet, a priest, an apostle, an evangelist and a pastor. He seemed to have all the major gifts built in his own character. And there's some people in leadership who are like that. And if they are like that, then they need to add to everything they do one other gift, which is the gift of letting other people work as well. We call it delegation. I do my delegation because I'm hopeless on some things, and people know that. I also delegated things that I'm passionate about and believe in, and know that the other person won't do it the way I would do it. But because they were able to do something, I was able to get on with something else. And so we was able to grow whatever we were working on by working together. Partnership in pastors and leadership is so important. But there are some characteristics that a church, you and your pastor and your leaders should do. And the first one is to guide the truth. Today we have a comprehensive range of study Bibles. There's only one or two study Bibles that I myself would recommend. I think we have far too many study Bibles. But if you wanted a study Bible that concentrated on the background information, the way a book came into existence, and some of the main themes of the book, and maybe an outline of the book, then I would tend to use the NIV study Bible. The English Bible, the Standard English Bible, also is a good study Bible, but it's very large and very big and overfull in my judgment. But both of them are very good, of which we're grateful for. But we don't need a Bible study for this and a Bible study for that. Well, maybe some people do, so we shouldn't be overcritical. But in terms of general distribution, the English Standard Version and the NIV is what I would recommend. Guarding the truth. The more you understand the great truths of salvation, the Genesis to Revelation truths of salvation, the essential truth of the Bible, the critical truth of the Bible, the more you're able to protect it when you talk. There are many elements that are not the essential truths of the Bible that you don't need to worry about. Let me just take one that just comes up now. You don't need to worry at all about if you believe differently concerning dispensational teaching that people give in the Bible. I will tell you about my own experience of dispensationalism one day, but you don't need to worry about it. If you say Jesus is King of Kings and Lords of Lords, that is something worth guarding. That is something worth keeping. If you say that heaven is full of singing and praising and hallelujah, and the work of God is going to be completed with music, that's worth having a go at. If you say the seven churches need help and advice and correction, that is something worth understanding. But if you don't know how the mopping up of the history of mankind is going to work out, and the clear events that some people seem to say to you, and you find that difficult, don't let that worry you. Let the book of Revelation be something that you can guard on all those critical and essential truths that it gives to us. Satan will be defeated. The beast of the sea, whatever it is, will be defeated. The beast of the land is going to be defeated. There is a lake of fire. There are some people whose names are not in the book of life. Jesus is victorious. The Christian church is like a bride descending out of Jerusalem. There is a city that has a garden within it, and where there's going to be the glorification. There is a temple that's going to be so big that every single Christian can dwell in it. There is a river of life flowing from the throne of God, and so on and so forth. And trees where the leaves, just the leaves, are for the healing of the nations. Guard the truth. Guard the truth about Jesus. You might find some things about Jesus difficult. I find some things about Jesus difficult. But there's so much about Jesus that you do know that's worth guarding. God manifest in the flesh. The Son of God and the Son of Man. They're worth guarding. Died for you, died for me, died for everyone. Worth guarding. Dealing with sin. Getting rid of Satan. Getting rid of the power of sin and its condemnation. All those things are guarded. Loving your brother and your sisters. Loving humanity. Doing things that are right and good to humanity. Not allowing things to get out of hand in a negative way, but in love to overcome evil. Let goodness overcome evil. Guard the truth. Then there's a difficult one here, but correct the unruly. I've met so many people who are just unruly in the church. In the church, well, it was my church actually. There was a group that wanted to lead the church, and I empathise with them for their reasons, but I would not associate myself with them. Why? Because I was in a fellowship of people. I'm not saying they were unruly, but I've met people who are unruly. I met one person who was unruly, and he came to see me. And when I see people from the church, I always make it a condition that whatever I do or see those people, I will follow it up with a letter, and the letter will go to the leaders of the church. It's a principle that I have, that it helps to guard me from saying so foolish things, of course, but it also helps the person to realise that we're not trying to create a split in the church. Well, I had this man, a good man, a good evangelist, not happy with the way things were done in the church. And he felt he should be the voice of those people who are discontented. And when I joined the church with no time at all, he says, can I come and see you? And because I'm a businessman and a leader, he felt I should be one of his voices as well. I sent him, I hope, a very lovely, sensitive letter that also went to the elders. He needed to be treated gracefully but firmly. This problem occurred for another 2 years. Another person from another church came down to investigate it and saw the correspondence, picked up the one that I wrote and said, he didn't know me. He said, the person who wrote this letter was saying the right thing. One of the elements that I put in the letter, I thought the unruly man should go to another church and be quiet for the first 6 months before he said anything. Whether that was wise or not, I don't know. But that is what I said. Correcting the unruly. Challenging evil. You're going to have in the church people where evil comes in the name of goodness. Light will appear that really is darkness. Where the angel of light will come in and you think it's got it right. And I can tell you some areas where it will be and some areas that you have not yet identified with. The one is the construction of the people of God in a building, how they operate together. We have lost so much of the New Testament teaching on church fellowship, and that has got to be rethought. And maybe it's partly being rethought as a result of Zooming and other devices that will come along to encourage that. But there's got to be, how do Christians work together? What do we really do mean by different gifts? And remember, there were gifts not mentioned in the Bible that are gifts, the gifts of singing that was taken on at that time, and the gift of writing, which Paul was involved in, many gifts of management. That we need to tap into a lot more energies that are wasted and not used in the church because we've created our pyramid church with leaders at the top being responsible for so much. And some of them are very good at it. But we need to read. That's a thing that's an evil, and we need to challenge it. People living together outside of marriage and in some peculiar ways, that's an evil that a church has to deal with. The great debates on things like abortion and inclusion of people from different countries and different traditions and different backgrounds. In theory, we want them. In theory, we want the people come from a Muslim world to be converted and come into our churches, but we don't want them to bring our culture with them. You see what I mean? We have to know something about challenging the evils that are there. Are there evils in the church? Yes. Do we need to do something about it? Yes. Do we need patience in the way we do it? Absolutely. One of the great challenges of the past was women taking a more active part in the church. And there is a great scholar, one of the great scholars of England, given the question to a conference that he was in, to people of like-minded, of keeping women not doing things in the church. And in this paper that he produced, he made it clear to the people who took his position that women should be more active in the church. He says you don't split a church over it. You wait, you pray until it's right for the mood to change, the culture to change. Now, I didn't agree with that. I think I was more proactive in getting change. But that's another thing we need to deal with. And we can't just simply use one or two verses and turn them into something that were never meant to be. We need to see. And if there's three ways you can interpret the verse, then you have to put that down at a lower level than a doctrine that is there. As you can see, I am in favour of all God's people within the fellowship, the church, to deal with these things and to go on. And that the church is there also as a servant of the world. We should be always the first people to help. One of the thrilling things that I read in the United Kingdom, that although the church is much smaller than it used to be, that when there's a crisis, it's the church and its members that come to the rescue or do more. It's the church who open their homes and their hearts and their pockets. It's the church who wants to serve the world. We want to help the world with the gospel as well, but we want to help the world. My daughter had the privilege when she got married. She decided that, and she's only 22, I think she was, but she and her new husband decided that not to have gifts as normal, but all the gifts to go to the roof that was needed in a school overseas. And my editor also went with them to that one. And what was it called?
They're calling it Family House.
A family house. And what was the place you went to?
Romania.
Romania. That has slipped my mind for a moment, Romania. We serve the world. I've had the privilege of being able to help to build a small family cottage in Spain, 2 cottages together for young people to get away from television and to have 2 weeks of study of the Word of God, as well as many Christians going there for the family. And the local churches have accepted now the responsibility for its maintenance. We're there to serve the world. And years ago, it was the Christian community who created the hospitals around the world. Whenever engineering was going in any part of the world, you'd find Christians going with the engineers. And why the engineers built the roads and the trains and doing those kind of things and building. So often, the little church and the little hospital and this educational centre was being built and developed by Christians. Indeed, many times the engineers would help the Christians. If they wanted a printing press, they would help them to do the work of the Christians, serving the world, working in harmony with the world. I need to just pause there for a moment and just say one thing that is worth mentioning, serving the world. The Bible tells us that we should not be yoked together with the world. And I have found that truth so important. And yet 3 times I have been yoked together in business with the world. And 3 times I've lost for the kingdom substantial sums of money. Now, you'd have thought I'd have learnt the lesson the first time, but I didn't. And you thought I would have learnt the lesson the second time, and I didn't. And you thought I learnt the lesson the third time, but I didn't. I'd have served the world better not being yoked in business in those ways. And the last of these great truths that we have here of the church, of the proactiveness of the church, of its authority and its mission, in its guarding the truth, correcting the unruly, challenging evil, evangelizing the world, taking the gospel out and serving the world, is glorifying God. Now, how can I glorify God? How can I glorify God as a teacher or a doctor or nurse or working in the office or any kind of work? Because I bring the presence of God and the love of God and the grace of God into that situation. I, as an individual, glorify God by making God's goodness bigger and better, magnifying Christ, as Paul would say. That's how I do it. Now, one of those headings, I think I may not have given you the force that I wanted to give, which was evangelizing the world. The evangelizing of the world is one of the great commitments we have in our Bibles, in the Old Testament and in the New Testament. We often use the phrase, a light to the Gentiles. Behind that phrase, a light to the Gentiles, meant that God wanted all his people who were to be in his land to be a blessing to all the neighbours and all the nations around them, and to be a light to them all. In the New Testament, we're to shine as lights in a dark world, like the stars in the sky that's there. But what has happened is this, and what happened is so thrilling and exciting, that Jesus was resurrected, and then at Pentecostal days he was glorified, and the Spirit of the living God came down, and gifts were given to people. And the sons and the daughters could talk about God in their everyday lives. Both of them talking about God in their everyday lives. And that was evangelism. Talking about God in your everyday life. I am an ordinary person. And in my ordinary life, I've had the privilege of talking about God in my daily life. Boy in his Bible again. Thank you for listening. See you soon.